Hi, everyone. I'm Claire, Chief Empowerment and Partnerships Officer at Cybersecurity. Co-hosting with me today is Marlon Bermudez, founder and VCISO at Cybersecurity. Our guest today believes business can change lives faster than any law or policy ever could. She helps founders and leaders who feel stuck in their growth when revenue is slowing, customer losses are rising, and the path forward feels unclear. Valerie is the CEO behind the Impact VC and Revenue North Star and the creator of the Strategic Revenue Reset, a proven method that has driven company growth by as much as 600% across tech, healthcare, cybersecurity, and more. She also hosts the Founders Path podcast and co hosts Mindset Holics, bringing both sharp strategy, and heart to every conversation. Fun fact, she spent 18 years singing opera and musical theater, rides dirt bikes, scuba dives, and gives back through work with women's groups, refugees, and families in need. Please join me to welcome Valerie Cobb to the Authenticity Journey podcast.
Hi, Valerie. Hello and welcome.
Thank
Welcome.
you. I always feel very much like, who is that person you're reading about? Okay.
That's you. That's you. That's the intensity and knowledge that you're bringing to the authenticity journey today. And we're so excited to have you here. And well, to start, would you share something about yourself? I know I've shared a little bit, but there's always more. Is there something unique you would like to bring to the authenticity journey about yourself?
Nah, it's funny. Again, we all post kind of our best selves, kind of thing. And
Yes.
in being authentic, I think part of the reason that I have been able to be involved the way that I've been involved and show up for the community, show up for organizations, period, is because my life's journey has been so varied. And um, when I remember one day we were living in the Cayman Islands and we had Cuban refugees pull up to a community dock. It wasn't I say our dock, but it was our community. It was a little community. Avid scuba divers, so we're always near it. We want to be near water all the time. I'm not right now. I wish I
Right.
was, but well, I am, but not warm water. I want near warm water. Anyway, um, and my daughters taught me one of the best lessons in life, and they were young at the time. Their compassion and empathy for those refugees that had been in a panga on a boat for 4 days. And if you're a scuba diver, you know what being on a panga in the middle of the ocean, let it alone for 4 days, would mean.
Wow.
It's very frightening. But my daughters are like, Mom, help them. Just help them. And they were like, what can we do? What can we do? And the immigration laws in the Cayman Islands are such that if you have your papers, you can stay. If you don't, they help escort you home, or you can take your boat and go elsewhere. Well, one of the people on that boat, they had left their families behind. And they were very, very sick. One of them was very, very, very sick. And
Oh.
probably I would say needed water and a few things like that.
Oh, wow.
And it was my girls, my young girls, at the time, 10 years old, running around the condominiums asking everybody to come up with food, water. And they found people that had at the time a cell phone that could let them call their families and let them know that they're okay. And I think if I was a spouse or had a child who had left on a panga and hadn't heard from them for 4 days, wondered if they actually made it or didn't make it. There's some of those
Absolutely.
things. And I think it kind of segues into some reasoning why I feel business can change lives faster than governments can, or legislation or policy can, because it wasn't the government that was running around trying to help. It was actually the communities that were trying to run around and help. And it was actually the bright minds of small or younger children that are the next future. And businesses, the small businesses, when they succeed, they create jobs, they create opportunity, they create new, what I would say, new products and services, and they solve the need and the challenge. Yes, a lot of them get gobbled up by the big companies, but they kind of use them as incubators. But nonetheless, it still helped others.
Right. Well, what a great act, and I can imagine the huge impact you had on the life of others. Another question that I have for you, what does authenticity means to you as a person and as a leader? How do you live and bring authenticity into your life in both sides?
I think at any juncture, if you're not authentic with yourself, you're not going to show up authentic with anybody else. The adage of faking it till you make it is more self-loathing behavior for yourself than anything else. A lot of times you don't believe you're that person, and when you're not that person, you it, it just is very uncomfortable and you don't show up the way that you should be showing up, right? So
Right.
our decisions start with things that really boil down to an old-fashioned term of integrity, right? If you if you don't have integrity to yourself and to others, people smell that. They know something's off, there's something wrong.
Yes.
You haven't lived it or breathed it. And I think sometimes people get away from their authentic self because they're trying to prove something to somebody else that they're not. And that somehow that acceptance of yourself is less than what they would expect. So then you hide that, right? And I'm not saying that you vomit all the bad things or the good thing, that kind of stuff. Yeah, you hold back some things. I mean, we know that with Brene Brown and all those things. You're vulnerable, but measured vulnerability. But eventually, if you are not going to be authentic,
You can't sustain that
you
for
can't
too long.
sustain it. Yeah, you're acting. I, and this is nothing against, honestly, this is nothing against the acting community, but I think that is why there's so many broken homes within the acting community. You've learned to play a part, and that part is something else every single time. And
Never thought of that.
over time, you just can't sustain who you are because you're playing somebody else all the time,
You become
And
attached to that role, that persona that you created or that you're playing. It makes you feel fulfilled and it gives you life because you bring that role to life. And then it becomes hard to detach from it. And the moment you detach, and then there's real life. And who are you as a person? And it's hard to accept. It's hard to accept the negative aspects of life within ourselves and even the positive ones because you're just attached to that beautiful one that everyone loves that you created. I think as a human, we all have a little bit of that. We all do, right? We are
Mhm.
the same. We create that beautiful side, and that's how we show up. And we want to show up with that power and beauty at all times, but we just can't. And then when we find ourselves more vulnerable or weak at some point or dealing with different things in life, we're afraid of showing up because this is not how people see me. This is not who they know. What do I do now? So you go into a state of, okay, what now? How do I even, move forward? So I think that's something we all experience at some points. I mean, I have experienced and I still do because it's okay. It's part of life. But again, like you said, we have to remind ourselves that it's okay to be there. We don't have to be attached to that role we created. sometimes it's not even a creation. It's also a part of you, right? That everything that you're bringing right now that looks beautiful and sounds amazing and it's engaging. It's not fake. It's real. But you're also much more than that. There's other things that will happen to you that will impact you in a different way, and there will be different versions of yourself, and it's okay. I think it's just about understanding that it's okay to be authentic, scary, but necessary. Yes.
And
Well,
Valerie, what you mentioned about acting and how, some individuals and some of us act sometimes trying to fill that role, that reminded me of something that I read or heard a while back in terms of be the director of our own lives. That way, we're directing and we're creating our life. So if we don't like the movie, then we can change the narrative. And then thinking outside the box is not always so easy, specifically when we're submerged in the box. But being the director of our own life is what came to mind when you mentioned that.
yeah, I mean, it isn't saying that today's version of yourself is incorrect or that you're being if that's a word, disingenuine, or you are going to be tomorrow a different person than you are today, getting
Yes.
comfortable with knowing that you're going to be a different. And I think that that's sometimes why, and you asked about business, a lot of times to ground myself, I've learned from over the years, I've learned that tethering myself to not just the soft skills, but the numerical aspect helps me kind of ground myself back to my why, what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, because as much as we like it or don't, numbers don't lie. They can tell a different story. You can actually spin it different ways, but numbers won't lie. But in that, anytime you're setting goals, for instance, let's say that you want to win a marathon, anytime you're setting goals, you're setting something that you haven't achieved yet, right? Let's say that you want to go and you want to run a marathon. Does that mean you're not being authentic because you haven't run the marathon? And in business, I think that's kind of what if we haven't arrived, we think, meaning run the marathon, we think that that's not showing up authentic and genuine. It is when you cross the line in integrity where you're actually saying one thing, but it's actually another thing, that it becomes a tightrope. And if I could elaborate a little further, we make goals to run the marathon, which means I will get up every single day and run X miles. I will weight lift. And you will literally, athletes are great at this. They will quantify and look at their measures over and over again. And even though they haven't achieved the thing yet, they're using those milestones to tether them to what they are trying to have happen. Now, in some cases where we say, well, we fake it till we make it, I'm not saying that you're not on a journey and still authentic when you're saying that. But what I am saying is if you're always faking it, then you're not authentic. So as to yourself, you're going to constantly be trying to figure out who you are, what you are, just like in the actor's journey. And I know a lot of startups or founders feel like maybe they shouldn't be in the CEO role. It's okay to say, I shouldn't be in the CEO role, hire somebody to be in the CEO role because I'm the founder doesn't mean I have to do the thing, right?
Right.
Or it is, I've never been a CEO, so I'm going to make goals and milestones to fill that role the best I can. And that way it is still genuine and authentic to themselves, right? I admit it, I'm vulnerable. I'm not a CEO yet, right? I'm
Right.
going to play the part, and then hopefully if I make it, then I've played the part well and I feel authentic to myself and If not, then I am authentic if I say this is not for me.
For
It's
me.
okay. I can still own a company and not be the thing. You know what I mean? And
It's
you,
giving
yeah,
yourself a chance, but being honest to yourself that you're not there yet and you're embracing that journey and you're going to do your best to make it work. But if it doesn't, if it turns out that it just doesn't match who you are, your personality, your values, you're stepping down. And I think it's okay to be honest with our own selves, right?
yep, yep. Be honest with your own selves. And that's what I really liked about what both of you are doing in your industry, right? You are knitting together something that's very authentic in your industry, even though that's not the goal of this show. But I think it's inspiring to people, and I think people need to know that that's a journey that you guys have done, whether we call it our past lives or years before, I don't care what you want to call it, but you've kind of gone in and said, okay, this is our next step in this journey. And it's just truing us up more and more and more as we go along. And that's what I find very exciting about what you guys are trying to accomplish with
It's
this.
just that it feels good to be authentic and to be vulnerable. It feels scary but good. So even in a business environment, I don't see why we should keep, wearing this personality or creating this person that we are not.
Yeah.
So it may sound a little too much in the beginning. I mean, I've spoken to clients or people that I've said things that I didn't think I would ever say or I would ever share. But hey, I feel much better. Whatever it is that I'm sharing, even if it's embarrassing, because it just makes you feel good. It makes you feel okay. I'm a human and they are as well. It actually brings you closer to people because you no longer have to hide, and they feel so comfortable to not hide as well. Because if I'm not hiding, if I'm being raw and real, then you feel okay. I guess I can be the same too. I'm welcome here. So that's the idea with authenticity. It's bringing into the world, into into business, uh, the ability to grow and stand out as you move through life as a real human, because that's what we are. We're not, the makeup we put on, the business suit you put on, and that idea that people have created about you. You're so much more than that, and you're going to show up in different ways, and that's not going to impact who you are as a leader. Um, so as we talk about integrity and authenticity, Valerie, was there any point at your life that you had at your career as a leader or at your personal life that you had to choose to be true to yourself?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Um, when you have to fire a client, and I know people don't like
That's
to hear
tough.
that because um there are times in business where a client is I, people it is very odd to me that even in a sales transaction, because it was a sales transaction, that organizations or humans believe that they can misbehave in the relationship. And, I walk into a store, if the store says, wear your shirt, your shorts, and your shoes, that's very common in a beach town, right? They want you to wear
Right.
your shoes, right? That's a very common thing. I've heard I've had friends go, that's so dumb. But that's their business. They have their right to tell you to wear your shirt, your shorts, and your shoes. And it was very interesting. I learned that lesson from one of my dearest friends. She's passed away since, but she was a prima ballerina, danced the entire globe, um, was married to the GM of the Ritz-Carlton, and she's one of the most genuine people I'd ever met. And there were people that were throwing fits about the dress code of the Cayman Islands, which it's odd that you would have a dress code of the Cayman Islands, but they weren't allowed to wear
Yeah.
thong bikinis and they weren't allowed to have any nudist. And this was interesting. And she danced the Lido in Paris and in Vegas. Some of those shows, some of them after 10 o'clock, they have no top on, right? And she taught me this interesting lesson, and it was a business lesson. And a lot of the business lessons come from people who are very authentic. She said, when I'm in somebody else's home, I honor and respect what that other person's home is, as in businesses are no different. So she was like really severely angry when people in the island would buck that rule, even though it didn't bother her personally. She said, this is their country, their rules, their things. And I remember thinking, that's that's a good way to look at everything. And
Wow.
so when I've had to fire a client, there was one that was yelling and screaming all the time at a receptionist. That was it. And I said, next time that person calls you and screams, you pass them over to me and I'm going to fire them. They do not behave that way on the phone. Fired the client. Client asked me to keep them for keep them anyway. Come on, please, keep it. And literally I said, you may not work with us for a solid year. If after a year you come back, I will consider this. And that person did come back, never swore at that receptionist ever again, never used foul language, never was a jerk again. And I think sometimes we say, well, it's business, you can put up with it. No, you can't.
No. I
It's, yeah.
I love how you're enforcing alignment, because at the end of the day, you're building a business, but you're also building a life, and it's all intertwined, right? So at the end of the day, we spend a lot of the time building something, whether you're working at a company or you're building a company. So respect is something that we all need to have with each other, with our clients, and vice versa. So I love the fact that I see, organizations like yours enforcing that, because sometimes companies do take heavy language in different situations, and that's not something that should be the case out there.
Yeah, it depends on what you want to build. What
Yeah.
kind of culture do you want to have at your organization? If you tolerate that at the beginning, that human may not have been high up on the totem pole, but it was still somebody that represented the company. And actually, it was the first face of the company at the time. It was years ago before they had all of the, I'm a lot older, years ago before they had all of the automated answering services and some of those things. But actually, we've had companies who use that as part of their genuine, you won't get an automated answering machine. We want you to talk to a human. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. I don't care if you're Google or whatever. At the end of the road, I've got to be able to go to bed at night and sleep good with myself. And so, and if the almighty dollar is the only reason we're in existence, then that's a pretty sad existence for sure.
Yeah.
And I love that perception that you brought, because it's the same as respecting our own space as a human, right? If you're allowing people to treat you with disrespect or to, humiliate you or bringing negative things to your life, you start impacting your own existence, and it becomes destructive to you because you're allowing that. So it's the same as it's the same with your space, the workspace. I think if you're allowing that to walk into your space, then eventually it becomes destructive, and there's nothing else to be found, and nothing of value anymore, because you allowed that. So it's a good perception, because it's the same way we have to respect ourselves. We also have to respect the physical space of others, countries or companies, businesses, different things. So it's I never thought through that perspective, but it's just
Well, my mom used to say, I don't want on my gravestone, here lies the most clean house, but the worst woman on the planet.
right.
That's not the legacy she wants to leave behind. And she had a very clean house. So, but it applies to business, right? Because at the end of the day, what's the goal in mind? In fact, when I'm talking to business owners and fixing their revenue issues, a lot of it really does start with their goals. I ask them first thing, what is your real goals? Because you aren't going to be authentic to what you're doing if your goals are not set.
Yes.
Mostly they just need to have someone guide them through what the outcomes should be from what they're trying to do.
Well,
And
yeah.
the word legacy reminded me of why we started the authenticity journey. We brought the authenticity journey to a wealth management conference, and the question that we were asking, well, we were asking a lot of questions, but one of them was, what does legacy mean to you beyond wealth, right? And we got a lot of very good answers that for them, legacy is not really attached to wealth, is more attached to what they're building and other things. So for us, we build the authenticity journey. We focus on building authentic relationships rather than transactional interactions. Because at the end of the day, I'm an introvert, and I figure out very quickly that my seat at the table is not sales, is not pushing things over. So that what you were saying earlier about, having the different roles, that reminded me of EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, and how each person has to be in the right seat. And transactional sales, there is a place for that depending on the industry. But for us in wealth management, it's all about relationship building. So for us, just building authentic relationships, having authentic conversations, it just flows easier than being pushy. We see that all the time. We are on the receiving end multiple times a week on people trying to sell us some stuff, and that doesn't generate like a great feeling. So that reminded me of the word legacy that you mentioned.
Yeah, sales has a 4-letter word because anytime you're not trying to solve a need and a challenge, and you're just trying to, the sleazy part, the thing that gives sales the 4-letter word is the sleazy part of those trying to push something inauthentic on them. So how good humans would sell is the relationship of knowing when to say something like, I can't help you, but somebody else can, or I don't have a need right now, somebody else can. And I think that you're spot on, Marlon, because when you say something like, I get these sales calls and I'm an introvert, and when you're building wealth management, it's all about relationships and things like that. It's a point where you have to know, like, and trust people. And in that, people have to feel like there's a vested interest in them. I think that that's kind of what's happening even with AI. If we bring AI up, AI feels like it's fake or false or something, and you almost sense it as a human being when it's happening. And I'm not saying it's a bad tool. I'm not saying that for leveraging it. Internet is a tool, AI is a tool, but when you're talking like deep fakes, or when you're talking about, the hubbub on LinkedIn of, did you write your own content? Are you just spewing all this stuff out? It is, even in the let's just say it and rip the band-aid off. Revenue generation encompasses marketing, sales, service, and advertising is just as sleazy as a salesperson sitting there in front of you, right? Or whatever that is, and using tactics that feel disingenuine, or if that is a word, right? It feels wrong. You can feel it. So authenticity feels right, right?
Yeah.
It feels like somebody has your back, somebody is really trying to work for you, not just trying to get something from you, right?
Right. Someone you can trust, and trust is everything in life. We can flow better, we can sleep better, we can express ourselves better because there is trust. Valerie, so I know you work with founders, and I know when they get stuck, right? When they get stuck through their journey, that must be really challenging. And beyond strategy, what mindset shift do you have to work with them to change to actually, achieve whatever it is that they're trying to achieve?
Let's answer that in two parts. Founders themselves, everybody comes with their own little set of baggage, right? Founders
Yes.
themselves are a lot of times clean slate, and they're very much trying to just grow an organization. And they actually are at a very vulnerable stage where they're willing to listen. I think the broader, and yes, I do work with founders, but I think the broader question or the broader topic would be the second part, which is the pivots. So resurrections or pivots, that's usually an entire organization that is very stuck in their way and they have stalled. And a lot of times when you have to work in that environment, and that has been, I call them 30-year-old startups because they've been there, they started up, their life cycle has gotten to a point where they don't know why things aren't working anymore. They either didn't tether themselves to the market or whatever.
Right.
So they kind of, as a whole, or the organization as a whole, has the same challenge that a founder has. They have a lot of baggage, but now you've got to untangle all the baggage, right? And you've got to get to a root cause of what really is going on. And so underneath, both sides will have self-loathing behavior. And when I say self-loathing behavior, it is behaviors like, we're stalled, I can't do it, I don't know what's wrong, I'm wrong, I must not be leading right, I must not, you hear on LinkedIn all the time all these people talking about bad bosses. I must be the bad boss. Or maybe you're the bad employee. I don't know which way it is, but the reality is there's all that dynamic that is happening. And I think one of the most critical things is coming to both those organizations with a can-do attitude. And a lot of times I do that and I tether it to the numbers because there's relief when people can see that they can get out of their mess. So it's like, what are your goals again? Do you want to exit in 5 years? Do you want to be the good to greater in 5 years? What is it that you want to be? What do you want to accomplish? And sometimes it boils it back down to, well, we we kind of got ourselves away from true north. Originally in the pivot, let's say they're a Series C, so they got 400 million, 500 million in funding, and they're like, these investors are down our neck and we can't answer it and we're freaked out, we're trying to figure this out. Tethering them back to their original reason why they created something, or their original mission, or a redefinition of their vision, those types of things. You guys talked about EOS. It's no different at a company that's well established or a founder. Those attitudes are all across the board the same way. We just answer to different monsters at the time, right? So just kind of breaking it down and saying, okay, just relax. Let's look at the goals again. Let's look at the financials. Let's plan. I love actually Great Game of Business because Jack Stack says if you plan for a recession, you never have one. There's such relief. People get very relieved when they're like you said, I don't want to hide anymore. They all of a sudden can expose themselves for the problems they're having and their earnest want to change. And you get them back to their authenticity journey, their
Right.
genuine reason why they started this company and what they wanted the outcomes were for that company. And then give them a roadmap that gets them there. It's just like with cybersecurity. You can give them a roadmap that they go, this is digestible. I can do this now. I'm
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. And Valerie, I know we're a little bit short on time. The last closing question for you would be, what piece of advice or wisdom would you like to transfer to the next generation? What would be something that you would like to share?
Oh my goodness. I think I already shared it with my mother's epitaph on her I, honestly, there's EQ, there's IQ, and Mel Asher and we have a podcast called Mindset Holics, and we were talking about this. I am not in a fractional environment. I am not selling really anything other than wisdom. I've lived it, done it, been there, felt almost every aspect of every stage because of my age, for sure. That doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom when you're younger, because you do. But um, a lot of times we look at so many things under a lens of the emotional intelligence or intelligence, period. And we forget the wisdom quotient, the wisdom, the practical application of knowledge. And I think if I were to tell my younger self that question, it would be just calm down and listen. It's okay that you don't know everything right today. Again, unless you've experienced a few things, sometimes you won't know that thing, right? So it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how to fuel a rocket. That's okay. Not my thing.
And
All good.
it's a great point, because if you're so overwhelmed with the idea that you don't know everything, or that you don't have what you need, what it takes to do whatever it is that you're doing, you limit yourself, and you're just so close-minded that you actually, there's no growth, you can't see ahead, you don't learn anything, and there you stay. It's like you get stuck,
You get
like with
stuck.
founders, you're just stuck in that because you're not able to see with clarity, just
Yeah.
holding on to that. Oh, I don't know everything, I don't know this, I don't know that, and then you remain there not knowing.
Yeah, having knowledge of something does not mean that you know how to have practical use of that thing, right? And I think with wisdom quotient, it really boils back down again to your authenticity, because you're wisely applying certain things. You
Yes.
outsource certain things, you hire different employees to do certain things. You don't need to be everything to feel confident, feel great, feel all of those things. And and so I would probably leave you with the wisdom quotient.
Okay, well,
I love that.
I love that. Well, quick, I love to finalize with something really powerful. What's your life mantra? We all have something that we hold on to and we move through life with that. What's your life mantra? What is a saying that you walk with every single day as you wake up in the morning, and that empowers you, and it's your everything?
Wow. My life's mantra. It's gotta be, oh wow. There's so many things that flash through my mind on that. Um,
Share one. We may have
our
so
change,
many.
embrace change. There's nothing more constant than change, and be okay with it. It's okay. Embrace change. I, that's how new things are made. That's how life is made. And so I would just say my main mantra is for human beings, be kind. My other mantra is just embrace change. That's it.
Powerful.
I love that.
Yes, yes. Let's all embrace change. And here we stay with Valerie. This has been an amazing conversation. And I think your life mantra is much needed, powerful, deep. And I'll stay with that. I'm sure Marlon will too. Let's embrace change. Let's all embrace change in the world, within ourselves, outside of ourselves. Change is part of life, part of moving through the unknown. And if you embrace it, I guess you live. Thank you so much, Valerie, for your time. And I'm hoping to maybe see you at our event that's coming up in October.
Yes,
October
I'm
1st.
hoping to look into that.
We'll have opera. We'll have an amazing opera singer, and dancing as well will be a very, very engaging event where you get to socialize with different leaders in wealth management. I would love to see you there. I think you have so much to bring. And yes, we hope to see you soon.
Awesome.
Thank you for
Thank
joining
you,
us.
guys.
Thank you so much.